When you're talking about idolatry, are you talking about worshiping the earth versus God or versus Yahuwah? What do you mean? There's a lot of people right now that are fighting very hard to save this planet from people. And not just people who pollute the earth, but also governments that pollute the earth. And, the military-industrial complex, which is polluting the earth. And black projects, which spend trillions of dollars using Tesla advanced weaponry to pollute the earth, using microwave, radiation. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So it's hard for me, on a personal note, to imagine that billions of good-hearted people who mean well and do divine things, live in a divine way, are all being cast away. It's very hard for me to accept that that is so, because people were born into different traditions. It's not their fault. Everybody was born the way they were born, in the families they were born in the tribes and areas they were born in. So how do you address that?
Yeah, I understand that. What Yahusha himself said about that was very merciful. He said that the one that knows, the wise managers that should know the truth, that don't correct the flock, are going to be suffering many, many blows, and they're held to a higher standard. But the average sheep that is misled by the shepherds is going to be corrected severely and will not have to suffer as many blows as, to say, the shepherd that misguided them. So the one that didn't know what to do will receive blows and suffer setbacks, and will be corrected and have to accept those corrections. But the one that knew what to do and did not do it is going to be cast out, because when they hear the truth and they don't receive the truth and receive a love for the truth, then a stronger delusion will be sent to them, and then they will really be in trouble, because there's not going to be much hope for that, because Yahuwah himself will send a delusion. He hardened the Pharaoh's heart, and he's going to harden other hearts too that reject the truth. So you have to receive a love for the truth, and when that truth comes to you, and it's given to you freely, and you reject it, he's only going to come to you so many times, and then he's going to turn off, and he's going to say, well, I've tried. He's going to send so many boats to deliver you from what your stronghold is, because people don't even know what strongholds are, but that's really what we're talking about.
Why don't you speak about what that is?
A stronghold is a mental fortress. It's a metaphor for a mental fortress where people are imprisoned in an idea. And the idea is usually the result of having heard it over and over and over. And by hearing it so many times, they accept it as truth. They say, well, I'm real familiar with that. Just like you'll look at a pagan symbol and say, oh, yeah, well, I've seen that a lot. It must be all right then. Like the back of the dollar bill. People look at the pyramid with the eye on it. And some people are told, yeah, that's the creator. It isn't the creator.
Definitely not the creator.
No, that's, the adversary. Adam Weishaupt developed that apparently, and he was a Jesuit. And, of course, he was inventing the Illuminati because 3 years previously the Jesuits had become illegal in 1773. And then in 1776, he got orders from his superior, I guess it may have been Cardinal Ricci, the Jesuit general, to create the Illuminati. But just because we see familiar words and hear familiar words and see familiar symbols again and again and again doesn't mean that it's good or acceptable. You have to examine everything and test everything that you believe. And that's what I had to do, and I had a lot of hooks in me. I was raised in severe witchcraft.
Define what you mean by witchcraft here. Like I said, I didn't come from a religious family or a very spiritual family. I came from a loving family, but not a spiritual family. So it wasn't clear to me until a few years ago that witchcraft really existed.
Well, the largest representation of witchcraft and the architecture of witchcraft is right out in the open in front of everybody on the planet, and they don't even recognize it as witchcraft. and that would be the Roman Catholic organization. Now, everything about that organization is based upon the Roman sun worship from the Roman Empire. The very titles that they use, cardinals. The cardo, or cardinals, were the assistant priests to the high priest of Janus, which was the Caesar. The Caesar had a title, and the title was Papa, which is inherited today as Pope. See, there's no Pope in the Scriptures, and there's no cardinals in the Scriptures. There's no sacraments in the Scriptures. See, these are all things that the Roman religion already had. The Mithras was one of the names of the deities that they'd inherited from the Persians. The Roman soldiers brought this back to Rome, and they assimilated it or syncretized it into their own religion, and the Caesar became the high priest, or was the high priest of this deity, Mithras. And this operation just embraced and basically adopted the Hebrew Messiah along with all the other sun cult things. And it was already witchcraft. And then, of course, when you look at and examine the idolatry that is going on with the idols themselves, the burning of candles in front of statues, praying to dead people, the items that are on the altar, which is an indoor altar shaped like that of an autopsy table, like a human body would. Human sacrifice was, of course, a part and parcel with these things.
Talk about that for a moment. I know it's very uncomfortable and unpleasant, but speak about the human sacrifices, because I don't think people understand this.
No, people don't know that. And inside of a pagan temple, okay, the operation of a typical pagan temple, pretty much anywhere in the world, involved human sacrifice. People have heard about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the hearts being taken out, beating, and up on the top of a big pyramid. No telling how much of that was going on in Egypt, too, and of course, Medo-Persia, and of course, Babylon. But one of the deities that most people have heard of is the deity, and I'll just spell the name, it's Moloch. Now, that deity had an image, and it had the head of a bull and the body and arms and so forth of a man, and its lower regions were an oven. And the arms were movable, and they were laid out in front of this beast, and they would be like reaching out, and people would put these babies into, or young children, into the arms of this, or the hands of this beast, and then they would be raised up to its mouth as if it's eating it. The child would fall then into its belly or its lap, and then it'd be immolated, and they would, cover the screams of the dying child by beating on tambourines and ringing bells and things, And of course, these children were pretty much mostly unwanted, because what was actually happening in the pagan temples, you read in the Scriptures, even way back in the book of Genesis, about these male and female prostitutes. Well, they were actually temple, they were common people for the most part. Some of them were priestesses and priests, but for the most part, what was actually operating in there was sex. The people went to these temples to worship their deities, and they would have sex. And then they would do this quite often at different times of the year, and in some instances it would happen in the spring, and then 9 months later the birth of these children would occur in what we would call December, and then they would burn these unwanted children in these fires, And the human sacrifice, of course, was used for unwanted people. The Druids had it too. They'd have a circle of stones like Stonehenge or something like that, and they'd have an oak pole in the middle of it. And then when the sun would rise, the Druid priests at the solstices and equinoxes, they would know which stone the shadow would fall on, and they would have little children sitting in front of each stone, and the stone that the sun chose as its sacrifice or offering would be the child that was taken and bound and put on a bonfire which is now called bonfire. And then the fat of the child was